Welcome, learners. Today we will start our 11th chapter, which is light, shadows, and reflection. Okay, this chapter is a very short chapter and a very easy chapter. At first, we discuss in this chapter there are two kinds of object. Okay, there are two kinds of object. Number one, luminous object, and number two, non-luminous object. Number one, luminous object, and number two, non-luminous object. What does it mean? Luminous object means those objects which has their own light. Such objects are called luminous object. And those objects which do not have their own light, such objects are called non-luminous objects. Okay, I can give you example of luminous object and non-luminous object. Just like sun. Okay, we are familiar with sun because it gives us light. It means it has its own light. So sun, we can say sun is a luminous object. Or in your room there is a bulb also which gives its own light. Okay, so that is called luminous object. But those objects which do not have its own light, such objects are called non-luminous. As you can say chair, you can say tree. Okay, you can say wall. So these objects are non-luminous objects. We can see these objects by the reflection of light. Because of reflection of light, we are able to see these non-luminous objects. Okay, but luminous objects, they have their own light. Okay, so these are the luminous and non-luminous object. Now uh, we have categorized these objects in three different ways also. Number one, transparent. Number two, opaque. Number three, translucent objects. Okay, as you know, that we already discussed this thing, okay, in our previous chapter, that what is transparent, what is opaque object, and what is translucent object. But we can explain this in another manner also, that transparent objects are as at first I am giving you an example of it, that is a glass. Okay, glass is a transparent object. Why? Because we can see clearly through an object, means it is allowing light to pass through it. Transparent object allowing light to pass through it. Okay, so these are transparent. And what about translucent? There are some objects through which we can see but not very clearly. Okay, such objects are known as translucent. You can say they allow very little light to pass through it. Okay, sunglass, vegetable oils. Okay, so these are the example of translucent. Okay, these objects through which we can see but not very clearly, so such objects are called translucent objects. And number three, there are opaque object. Okay, opaque object means those objects that do not allow light to pass through them. Okay, such objects are called opaque objects. They do not allow light to pass through them, or we can say that we cannot see another side of that object. Okay, it totally blocks the light, so such objects are called opaque object. Okay, now in this table 11.1 we have object. It has given us object and material. So we have to fill this one. Okay, view through the object possible, fully, partially, not at all. Object is opaque, transparent, and translucent. Okay, you have to uh, write this one. Okay, as it has given us pencil. Okay, can we view through the object possible? What do you think? Fully, partially, not at all? Okay, answer should be not at all. It means that object is opaque object. Just like rubber ball, uh, can we view through the object. Can we view through this rubber ball? What do you think? Fully, partially, not at all. Okay, not at all. So it means that this is an opaque object. Got it? So we have divided objects in two categories. At first, luminous object and non-luminous object. Okay, luminous object which has their own light, non-luminous object which do not have their own light. Okay, such objects are called luminous and non-luminous object. And we further divided objects in three different categories, like transparent, opaque, and translucent. Transparent materials are those materials, okay, which allow which allow light to pass through them. So such objects are called transparent. And translucent objects are those objects which allow light, but a very small. Okay, but in case of opaque objects, okay, opaque objects, they do not allow light to pass through them. So these objects are called opaque objects. Now we have another thing in this chapter, dear students, that is about shadow. Okay, we familiar with this term shadow. Okay, sometime we have seen that shadow of an object gives an idea about its shape. Am I right? Okay, for this one, we will discuss this activity number 2. Okay, now one by one hold each of the opaque objects in the sunlight. Okay, dear, so you can do this one. Hold opaque objects in the sunlight, slightly above the ground. Then what do you see on the ground? Okay, you see there is some dark patch formed by each on the ground due to its shadow. It means that what is the main thing behind it? These objects, opaque objects, block the light. Okay, these objects block the light. So just behind it we can see the dark patches. Okay, these patches are called shadows. So in this activity also we are doing the same thing. So spread a sheet of paper on the ground. Okay, hold a familiar opaque object at some height so that its shadow is formed on the sheet of paper on the ground, and ask one of your friend to draw the outline of the shadow while you are holding the object. Draw outlines of the shadow of other object in a similar way. Okay, now ask some other friend to identify the object from these outline of shadows. How many objects are they able to identify correctly? Do you observe your shadow in a dark room or at night when there is no light? Do you observe your shadow in a dark room or at night when there is no light? I think your answer should be no. Do you observe a shadow when there is a just source of light, nothing else in a room? It seems we need a source of light and an opaque object to see a shadow. Is there anything else required? There should be a screen also. Okay? So to find shadow, we should have light source. We should have an opaque object which will block light, which blocks light. Okay, so such opaque objects we need. We should have a source of light. Then by this we can get shadow of that particular opaque object. Okay, now in activity number 3, this is an activity that you will have to do in the dark, in the evening. Go out in an open ground with a few friends. Take a torch and a large sheet of cardboard with you. Hold the torch close to the ground and shine it upwards so that its light falls on your friend's face. You now have a source of light that is falling on an opaque object. If there were no trees, buildings, or any other object behind your friend, would you see the shadow of your friend's head? This does not mean that there is no shadow. After all light from the torch is not able to pass through his body to the other side. Now ask another friend to hold the cardboard sheet behind your friend. Is the shadow now seen on the cardboard sheet? Thus the shadow can be seen only on the screen, the ground walls of a room. Okay, so a building or other such surface act as a screen for the shadow you observe in everyday life. So you should know one thing, dear student. I want to say only one thing and this activity also want to say one thing to you, that we should have screen also. Okay, if we have a light source, if we have opaque object, okay, we are also opaque object because we do not allow light to pass through us, so we are an opaque object. So there should be screen also where we will get the image, where we will get where we will get shadow of our body. Okay, and we usually see our shadow, but at that time the ground, okay, the wall also act as a screen for that one. Okay, this is very important thing. Now some important points related to a shadow. We know now that for to find perfect shadow of any opaque object, we should have opaque object. That opaque object, we should have source of light, and we should have that screen. Okay. Now in this activity number 4, okay, you can see here, we can do this activity with. Okay, place a chair in the school ground in your home, okay, on a sunny day. What do you observe from the shadow of the chair? Then observe the shadow in this condition. Okay, does the shadow give an accurate picture of the shape of the chair? If the chair is turned around a little, okay, now you are changing the you are changing the shape of chair. Okay, you are turning around a little, then how does the shape of the shadow change? Then take a thin notebook and look at its shadow. Then take a rectangular box and look at its shadow. Do the two shadows seems to have similar shape? Now you can do this with flowers or other objects of different colors and look at their shadows, a red row and yellow row. This is also very important point. Okay, if you are taking red rows, then what kind of shadow you are finding there? If you are taking yellow rows, okay, what type of shadow you can get in a screen? That is also in same color, like yellow rose gives yellow shadow, red rose gives red shadow, or it gives black shadow always. Okay, so these are very important observation. Okay, and take a long box and look at its shadow on the ground. When you move the box around, you may see that the size of the shadow changes. When is the shadow of the box the shortest? When the long side of the box is pointed toward the sun, or when the short side is pointing towards the sun. So these are very important things. Okay, by activity we can learn these things. Let me tell you something related to it, that the angle between source and opaque objects is also very important to for size. Okay, if we change the angle, then we get different size of the shadow, and the distance of that opaque object with screen is also very important. Okay, if the distance is more, then what happen? Okay, if distance is lesser in compare to previous case, then what is the length of that shadow at that time? Okay, shadow length changes when we change the distance of opaque object and screen. Okay, so we have to know these all things by our activity. Got it? So according to activity you will get your answer. Okay, thank you dear students. Do these activity related to shadow today. Thank you.